Here are the 3 keynotes for the speech titled Breaking Limits: How to Rise Beyond Fear and Failure in a Motivational Book Style, written in an educational way. Keynotes. 1. Fear as a constructed barrier. Fear is not always real, it is often a mental construction that restricts progress. By understanding its psychological roots, one can transform fear into a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. 2. Failure as a teacher, not an enemy. Failure should not be treated as the end of the road but as a guidepost toward growth. Each setback carries lessons that can strengthen resilience and sharpen direction. 3. Breaking limits through mindset and action. True liberation from fear and failure lies in cultivating a growth mindset and taking consistent, courageous actions that align with personal goals. Keynote 1. Fear as a constructed barrier. Fear is one of the most universal emotions known to humanity. It exists in every culture, every community, and every individual. Yet, what many fail to realize is that fear is often less about external reality and more about internal perception. It is not always the mountain before us that is too high to climb, but the voice within us whispering, "You cannot do it." To break limits, we must first understand that fear is not a wall built of stone, but a barrier made of thought. From a psychological perspective, fear is a survival mechanism. It once kept our ancestors alive by alerting them to dangers in the wild. But in modern life, this same instinct often overreaches its purpose. Instead of protecting us, it paralyzes us. It convinces us not to speak up in a classroom, not to apply for a job, not to start a new business, not to pursue a dream. Fear paints imaginary disasters in the mind and magnifies the possibility of failure until the act of trying feels impossible. The first step in overcoming fear is recognition. You must learn to pause and question the fear you feel. Ask yourself, is this fear rooted in reality, or is it only a story my mind has created? For example, the fear of public speaking is common, yet rarely does it present real danger. No one in the audience holds a weapon. No one is threatening your life. The fear is mental, not physical. And once you understand that fear often exists more in imagination than in fact, you weaken its control over you. The second step is redefinition. Instead of seeing fear as an enemy, see it as a signal. Fear usually shows up when you are about to step into something meaningful, something new, or something that matters. In this way, fear can be a compass. It points toward the very areas where growth is waiting. If you feel fear when starting a project, it is likely because the project has the power to change your life. If you feel fear before taking a big decision, it is probably because that decision carries the potential for transformation. Redefining fear as a guide rather than an obstacle gives it a new role in your life. It becomes a teacher instead of a jailer. The third step is confrontation. Fear does not shrink by avoidance, it grows. The longer you run from it, the stronger it becomes. But when you confront it even in small ways, it loses power. Think of fear as a shadow. In the dark, it looks enormous. But when you shine light on it, you realize how small it actually is. Every time you face fear directly, you chip away at its illusion. Over time, your courage grows stronger than the fear itself. Education also teaches us that fear is learned. A child does not naturally fear speaking, trying, or dreaming. Keynote 2. Failure as a teacher, not an enemy. Failure is one of the most misunderstood experiences in human life. Society often labels failure as a mark of weakness, a sign of incompetence, or the end of possibility. Many people grow up fearing failure as though it were a permanent stain on their character. Yet, history and education both reveal a deeper truth: failure is not the end of the journey, but an essential part of it. Failure is not an enemy, it is a teacher. When we examine the lives of innovators, leaders, and thinkers, a common thread appears: every single one of them encountered failure before they found success. The pattern is undeniable. Failure is not an accident on the road to achievement, it is part of the road itself. Without it, growth remains incomplete. This truth reminds us that failure is not meant to discourage us but to educate us. The reason failure feels so painful is because it strikes at the heart of ego. It confronts the image we hold of ourselves and forces us to see the gap between who we are and who we wish to be. That discomfort is not meant to destroy us, but to refine us. Just as a diamond is polished through friction, so is character polished through failure. The lessons hidden in failure cannot be learned in success, because success often masks weaknesses while failure exposes them clearly. Educational psychology supports this view. Learning is built on trial and error. A child learns to walk not by succeeding on the first attempt but by falling repeatedly, each time adjusting balance and strength until walking becomes natural. Similarly, students learn through mistakes on exams, athletes learn through missed goals, and entrepreneurs learn through failed ventures. The error is not the end, it is the correction that follows the error that leads to mastery. Failure also teaches humility. It reminds us that no matter how skilled or prepared we may feel, we are still human and still in need of growth. This humility prevents arrogance and builds resilience. When failure humbles you, it opens the mind to feedback, to advice, and to improvement. Without humility, success becomes shallow and fragile. But with humility, even small successes become stepping stones toward lasting achievement. Another powerful lesson from failure is direction. Sometimes failure does not mean the dream is wrong, but that the method is wrong. It reveals that a strategy must be adjusted, a plan must be refined, or an approach must be reconsidered. In this way, failure acts like a compass. It points out the wrong path so that you can discover the right one. Without these redirections, many would wander endlessly without clarity. The emotional strength that comes from surviving failure is also invaluable. Keynote 3: Breaking Limits Through Mindset and Action. Every individual has limits, but most of those limits are not physical, they are mental. The boundaries we believe exist are often self-imposed, created by doubt, fear, and past experiences. To rise beyond fear and failure, one must not only understand these barriers but also break them. And the two greatest tools for doing so are mindset and action. Mindset is the foundation of every achievement. The way you think about yourself, your abilities, and your potential shapes the life you live. A fixed mindset, the belief that your talents are permanent and unchangeable, creates invisible walls. It convinces you that you cannot improve, that effort is pointless, and that challenges should be avoided. But a growth mindset, the belief that skills can be developed through learning, practice, and resilience, removes those walls. It transforms obstacles into opportunities and mistakes into lessons. Adopting a growth mindset begins with self-talk. The words you use in your mind either weaken you or empower you. Saying "I can't" reinforces limitation, while saying "I haven't yet" opens the door to possibility. Education and psychology both confirm that language shapes belief, and belief shapes action. If you want to break limits, begin by changing the dialogue within yourself. However, mindset alone is not enough. Thought without action is like a seed never planted. Action is the force that transforms belief into reality. Each small step taken in the direction of your goal weakens the barrier of limitation. Even imperfect action is more powerful than waiting endlessly for the perfect moment. Many people remain stuck not because they lack potential, but because they never begin. The act of starting itself breaks the first layer of limitation. Action also creates momentum. Once you take one step, the next becomes easier. Progress builds confidence, and confidence fuels further action. For example, speaking a few words in front of a small group may seem minor, but it builds courage for larger stages. Writing a single page each day may not feel significant, but it leads to a finished book. Momentum is the hidden force that makes great achievements appear effortless, but it is always born from the courage to take the first step. Another essential part of breaking limits through action is consistency. Greatness is rarely achieved in one dramatic effort. It is built through steady, repeated actions that accumulate over time. Just as water shapes stone not by force but by persistence, so too does consistent effort shape character and achievement. Support systems also play a role. Here's a powerful conclusion to bring together all three expanded keynotes into one complete motivational speech on breaking limits: how to rise beyond fear and failure. Ending of the speech. In the end, life is not defined by the fears we carry or the failures we endure, but by the courage we summon and the actions we take. Fear, though loud, is nothing more than a shadow created by the mind. Failure, though painful, is nothing less than a teacher shaping our character. And the limits that appear to hold us back are not walls of steel but lines of thought that can be erased with determination, learning, and persistence. Breaking limits is not about living without fear or avoiding failure, it is about walking through them with courage. It is about understanding that growth lies beyond the discomfort, that wisdom lies within every setback, and that freedom lies on the other side of action. So, choose not to bow before fear. Choose not to see failure as defeat. Choose instead to rise, to try, to learn, and to act again. The strength you seek is already within you, waiting for the moment you decide to move forward despite the barriers. Remember this truth: the greatest limits you will ever face are the ones you accept. Refuse to accept them. Refuse to shrink into the corners of doubt. Step boldly into the unknown, fueled by a growth mindset and driven by consistent action. For when you rise beyond fear and failure, you do not just break limits, you redefine what is possible for your life. And that, above all, is the path to freedom, fulfillment, and true success.